Q, because that's certainly been in the news too. And I mean, that brings, it is a remarkable time that we live in. And that's why, even though we're not talking about manipulation, there are some people who believe certain things. They've been persuaded to, or it's easy for them to, and other people think they're wrong. Now we've got two groups of people. So unlike the experiment that Glenn was talking about, where you've got a whole bunch of people set up to sort of seduce or influence somebody to say something, what happens when you've got two groups of people? One group absolutely believes one thing is true, and another group says that is not true. Now, what do we do? Who wants to start that one off? Go ahead, Mark.
Just real quick, because I want to hear what Glenn and you have to say too, and Tom, is, Joe, you use the word one group believes something, and the other says it's not true. And yeah. I think it's so important that we focus in on that verb believe.
Great.
Or as a noun, belief.
Okay.
Because it's different. It's very, very different from sort of the counterpoint that you pose. So I did this workshop. This is actually back in 2018. It was a talk for the American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAAS, at their conference. And it was right after Kellyanne Conway, who was then the counselor to President Trump, had said on Meet the Press that there were more people at Trump's inauguration than there have been Obama's, but we could see the video. Clearly that wasn't true from the National Park Service. And so Kellyanne Conway says that the press secretary putting this out gave alternative facts to that. And this is where this term alternative facts came. And then I really geeked out on that and geeked out on what to do about it. But one thing that I learned at this talk is I started out by asking people, because it was titled like alternative facts and like what to do when data aren't enough and how to combat alternative facts. One thing I asked people is, if Kellyanne Conway had said he gave an alternative belief to that, instead of he gave an alternative fact to that, would you, and the people in the audience were mostly PhDs and professors and so forth, would that have bothered you as much? Because these guys were really exercised and irritated by it, as was I. And people were like, no, not really. And I said, well, why not? And so this distinction is so important, because if you recognize these falsehoods, these lies, for what they are, which is beliefs, then the question is, well, what is a belief? And when I talked about this, I said, well, we're talking about something that is an emotional reaction that could be colored by your community values, sort of thinking about the example that Glenn gave, sometimes your faith, your personal experience, anecdote, people in your family have always done it this way. These are things that are all tied to emotion. And so when you try to think about what to do about it, which was your question, Joe, it starts with an understanding that you're dealing with beliefs, not facts. You're dealing with emotions, not logic. And that takes you down a different path when you're trying to figure out what to do about it.
That's wonderful distinction. Thank you. Good thing you're a word nerd. I think it's great. Because yes, absolutely. The words matter so much. Yeah. What about that, Glenn? Because we're sort of talking about the difference between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, between an emotion and belief and something that's rational and factual. Where do we go?
Yeah, I think that Mark actually articulated that, all that really in a super compelling and interesting way. One of the problems with human psychology and human social interactions is we often don't realize, like, we can step back and we can say that we know that there's emotional parts of the brain that are very separate in a lot of ways from cognitive prefrontal cortex kind of parts of the brain. We know that there's logic processes and there's emotion-based processes, but individuals don't necessarily know that or feel that. Like, in other words, if I feel something's totally wrong, I might see that thing as just as wrong as saying 2 + 2 is 5. In other words, like our minds aren't really good at saying, oh, that's my limbic system talking now. We don't really, it's very hard to understand that within our own minds. And getting back to that point, Joe, that you were talking about regarding groups, one of the things that I think is so interesting is that there's such a strong tendency, one of our strongest evolved social psychological tendencies is what we would call the in-group out-group bias. And this is something that has been documented for decades now in lots of different ways. Simply, it's them and us thinking. It's a tendency for people that I define as who are in my in-group, and that could be defined as someone who's in my religious group, that is someone who's from my hometown, that could be someone who's on my baseball team. It could be I'm a Mets fan, you're a Mets fan. There's like so many ways we define people as being in their group versus out of their group. But there's such a strong tendency toward what we call in-group favoritism. Um, and there's this idea that we have the right reality. And there's a very strong tendency also toward what we call out-group homogeneity, which is they're all wrong and they're all the same as each other. We're all right and we're all different from each other. But those people, so there's such, these things are so entrenched. And I kind of feel like with this new world that's emerging, I almost feel like within the nation at a national level, it's kind of getting worse. And I feel like social media has the capacity to create more fissures and more splits and more in-group out-group reasoning than ever before. So
In
I'll
the
give a
terms,
quick, what's that?
in the terms, like, I don't know if you come across people calling other people NPCs. That's a reference
What?
to, so that's a reference to video game terminology. NPC stands for non-player character.
Ooh.
So it's like they don't have a stream of consciousness and they all behave the same way.
Got it.
So this is anti-social media, right?
Very.
Which is really what it is, anti-social media, where we're dividing into groups. But for me, and this is where the I am comes in, the idea we're all doing the best we can and that we're one group. It's called humanity. The thing is, if everybody is doing in groups and out groups, right? You're in the in group and you're in the out group. And if everyone's doing it, doesn't that mean we're all in the same group? Because we're all doing the same thing. That's the part that is just mind-blowing to me, is we are so similar, and yet we use that similarity to divide us. It's just mind-blowingly baffling, but we've been doing this since we emerged as Homo sapiens. We just do it. It's natural. Think about from development, stranger anxiety in an infant. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter where you live. You will develop stranger anxiety more or less around the same time, no matter what, because your brain has finally been able to compare two sets of information, a familiar face and an unfamiliar face, which is an in-group and an out-group.
Very interesting way to put it.
Right? At around the age of anywhere between 5, 6, 7, 8 months. Really, we're very cool as human beings. It's really cool.
Stretch the kindness, rush with madness. Is it sadness or just a show?